Match week 5 felt like the league tapped the brakes. 5 of 10 games finished level, with draws at the Emirates Stadium. Amex, Vitality Turf Moor and Stadium of Light, and the fingerprints of Europe were everywhere. City posted 32.8% possession at the Emirates, Guardiola's lowest on record, whilst Eddie Howe rotated 7 after Barcelona and Newcastle created next to nothing. This wasn't boring, it was risk management, tighter shapes, more set pieces, and smaller margins. So today, I'm here to bring you guys what we learned during Premier League Match Week 5. Liverpool 2, Everton 1. The opening game of Match Week 5 fell to the historic Merseyside rivalry between Liverpool and Everton. Both teams had started the season in promising fashion. Both teams were looking for a statement win over each other. Everton hadn't picked up a result at Anfield until their management under Carlo Ancelotti. But for the Merseyside faithful, this new team, full of youth, technique and excitement, was their best shot yet at getting a result. And with confirmations that both Isak and Florian Wirtz will not be starting for Liverpool, can you blame those Everton fans for believing? So, within the first 30 minutes, reality had returned back to Everton, as Everton found themselves 2 goals behind to Liverpool. Liverpool took the lead from a brilliant Gravenberch soft volley away from Pickford, with the midfielder finding himself unmarked as he ghosted in with a third-man run and a late arrival. Liverpool's midfield 3 worked in tandem together, pushing forward, sitting back and rotating on a dime. So, it was fitting that all 3 of them combined to score the excellent second goal for new Liverpool fan favourite in Hugo Ekitike, with Gravenberch yet again finding himself unmarked with the late arrival and putting the finishing moves to the final pass after the instinctive midfield play set up the move. The pass was so good that Hugo Ekitike just had to direct his shot away from goal, and within 30 minutes Liverpool had full control, yet Everton's response was equally impressive. They played within themselves in the first 30 minutes, but now with nothing yet to lose, they came back and reminded everyone of their newfound qualities. David Moyes pushed their defensive lineup, took risks, and started to support their wingers with better play further up, with Jack Grealish having an enigmatic battle alongside Connor Bradley. Everton got on the ball more, whipping in crosses from deep and penning back Liverpool at times, and their bravery was rewarded, as their moment to come back into the game came from unlikely scorer in Idrissa Gueye, whose first-time effort from close range restored the faith. Liverpool were shaken, but still remained controlled, and Isak and Florian Wirtz made their announcements in Anfield with the instructions from Arne Slot to play on the break and pick their moments. As Liverpool began to settle, they started to control Everton more, doubling up their wingers 2v1 and limiting Everton to deep crosses from out wide. In the end, Liverpool got the result and reminded everyone why they are currently the reigning champions, yet Everton leave this game with their heads held high, restoring faith and pride in their performance. That is now 5 for 5 for Liverpool during this season, yet could they be set to make this 2 for 2 once the season ends? Bournemouth nil, Newcastle nil. It was a stalemate at the Vitality Stadium, as Newcastle, clearly feeling the effects of a grueling CL midweek game against Barcelona, made 7 changes to their first team and introduced a 3-5-2 system using wingbacks to make up for the changes made in the team. And it was Bournemouth yet again who took advantage of a lethargic and tired Newcastle team. Bournemouth continues to be a bogey team to Newcastle. Is Eddie Howe showing too much respect to his former club? And it was Bournemouth who had the better of the moments in the game, dominating the ball. Voltemada tried to buy some contact to force a penalty, yet Bournemouth fans will feel aggrieved that the referee didn't send off Milan Tau for picking up what looked like to be a second yellow card when he brought down Christie, who was through on goal. Bournemouth fans will feel like they could have got more against Newcastle, but they'll also be happy at the response they're seeing from their team after losing out on so many stars in what was a really devastating window. For Newcastle fans, they will worry that after every Champions League game, will the team have enough in them to actually compete in the league? Man United 2, Chelsea 1. Red card manners. Chelsea returned back to Old Trafford, a stadium they have not secured 3 points in for the last 12 years. Alejandro Garnacho found himself on the bench. Chelsea fans went into this game with expectations high after 2 disappointing results versus Brentford and Bayern Munich. But within 5 minutes, Chelsea's world had collapsed. Sechko's flick-on pass Jalaba released the on-rushing Mbeumo towards goal. Robert Sanchez panicked, takes a step back, then reacts too late in dealing with his man, and within a second, a red card was flashed and Chelsea were instantly down to 10 men. What was curious though after this decision was the subs made by Enzo Maresca. Off came Esteval naturally to bring on Jorgensen, but then surprisingly, a double sub was made with Pedro Neto coming off, replaced by Tosin, with Chelsea set to use a 5-3-1. The one-man advantage in sub galvanized Man United, who continued to push further, and in the matter of of no time. They had deservedly taken the lead in the 14th minute, with Trevor Chalobah marginally playing Bruno onside. Troubles then got worse for Chelsea as Cole Palmer left the field with a suspected groin aggravation. And moments after that, the improbable became impossible when United had doubled their leads, with the goal typifying the lack of control and self-inflicted nature that has been creeping back into Chelsea's game, with Philip Jorgensen failing to handle a Reece James loose ball in the box and the experienced Casemiro taking full advantage with a header. United were on course to get their first big win under Amorim this season, only for Casemiro, the most experienced player on the field, to recklessly level the playing field after picking up his second yellow after fouling Andre Santos. This was the moment of hope for Chelsea to try and restore something back in this game. Yet Maresca's confusing decisions did not capitalize on this moment, and once the second half arrived, expectations from the fan base fell towards Double G coming onto the field in Garnacho and Gittins. However, Maresca had other ideas behind Double G, with both Gusto and Tyreek George finding themselves in the game. In the second half, Chelsea had wrestled back the possession battle, dominating with 72% against Man United's 28%, and 10 minutes to the match's end, Chalobah, the villain of the first half, was looking to become an unlikely saviour, as his headed effort made it 2-1. However, Chelsea had paid the price for having no direct threats out wide, and for all their efforts and hard work, they had a very blunt attack against United's defence. Was this game now a turning point for Amorim, and is this game now a fall from grace for Enzo Maresca? Fulham 3, Brentford 1. The late night kickoff of the day went to the London derby at Craven Cottage, and within 10 minutes, Damsgaard had given Brentford the lead, taking advantage of a misplaced pass from the promising teen in Joshua King, whose inability to connect Fulham's right side from build-up was taken advantage of by Damsgaard, who coolly slots away past Leno. This moment, though, had galvanised Fulham, who are riding off winning the game against Leeds last week in the 94th minute, and they wasted no time in finding themselves back in the game, with Lukic's deflected shot not dealt with or controlled by Brentford's defence in their books, with Iwobi wasting no time in wrestling control back to Fulham. Iwobi, one of the most underrated players in the league, turned from scorer to provider, as during Fulham's breakaway, he shapes his body inside and plays a delicious first-time pass to find the onrushing run of Harry Wilson, who just delicately places that ball away from the keeper with his left foot. Brentford continued to punish themselves, with Sessegnon's inviting cross from the left-hand side getting steered into its own net by the experienced Pinnock. The reliable rearguard that Brentford showed against Fulham last week was nowhere to be seen at Craven Cottage, and Brentford were lucky their blushes were spared, as Muniz's superb near-post effort was denied upon a VAR decision due to a very harsh handball. Fulham fans will continue to feel vindicated that VAR has been against them this season. VAR might have worked against them against Chelsea, but since then, Fulham have won twice, and Chelsea have failed to get 3 points since. Brighton 2, Spurs 2. Brighton have had a tough start to the new season, yet they picked up an impressive 3 points in a comeback win against Man City. They find themselves playing at home against Spurs, and within the opening 8 minutes of the game, they had taken the lead courtesy of Mintez's excellent goal. The goal came from great build-up down the right-hand side of Brighton, with last season's young signing in Gruder proving to be a very instrumental figure for the Seagulls. As he combines with Ruta plays in an excellent first-time through ball in behind, and Minter takes great controlled touches towards goal before effortlessly rounding Vicario into an empty net. Things looked even better for Brighton when young standout Swedish international Ayari took a surprise shot from the edge of the box, hitting it with the outside of his boot with enough swerve to surprise Vicario at the final moments. Brighton's game plan was clearly working, hitting the spaces in behind Spurs' fullbacks. However, Spurs had been a small constant threat throughout the game, and just before the first half whistle blew, Richarlison steered in his third goal of the season to give Spurs a fighting chance in the second half. And once it got to the second half, Spurs' intensity increased, and their resilience and their pressure paid off. They can thank stunning performances by Udogie, whose unrelenting forward play from the left-hand side forced many great occasions for Spurs, and they can thank the arrival of big money signing in Xavi Simons, who was rested on the bench after his exploits in the Champions League, but came on to play in his familiar 10 position as Thomas Frank turned Spurs into a 4-2-3-1 to try and steal the game back. Xavi Simons instantly tested with a shot outside the book, forcing a smart save from Verbruggen, and he nearly had the moment to make it 2-2 after Mohamed Kudus' excellent play from out wide sets up Simons perfectly, but he is unable to steer it away from the keeper. Kudus, one of the danger men on the right flank this season, turned into a provider for Spurs yet again, with his in-swinging cross from the right-hand side steered into into its own net by Van Hecker, and Spurs will feel right at the game's final moments. There was a strong penalty shout as Xavi Simons was bullied to the ground by the onrushing David Coppola. VAR inspected the decision, said no, and it seems like Simons' small frame had worked against him in that moment. On paper, the point was fair. Brighton had the first half, Spurs at the second half, and Thomas Frank will hope the resilience Spurs showed will help them with their pursuits as the season goes on. Arsenal won, Man City won. But Man City feeling the effects of a second away game after midweek CL duties. They surprised everyone with their defensive display. The plan may have been to strategically give up possession, but Arsenal played their part in suffocating City. But City are evolving this season, less reliant on possession, more reliant on dominating actions and using the spaces to counter. Something that works when you have the best forward in the country in Erling Haaland. And it was City who took the early lead courtesy of Haaland himself, who caused trouble throughout the game with his deep hold-up play and runs from behind the halfway line. He galloped onto a Rangers through ball to put City in front, and Arsenal struggled to create in that first half, with Man City looking to pick their moments strategically with counter-attacks. But one thing Arsenal had their way was the match strangleholds, as they slowly kept on suffocating Man City. Arteta may have been caught off guard by City's approach in the first half, hence why he made certain lineup decisions to start the game, but he had clearly seen enough to know what the game needed exactly, and he wasted no time in the second half with the double introduction of Eze and Saka to up the ante, and up the ante they did. Arsenal had more threat. They pushed more men forward. Donnarumma, who loves playing versus Arsenal, was tested on multiple occasions and stood out strong, making countless saves to deny Arsenal. Man City were putting on a strong rearguards, uncharacteristic performance, yet the game changed completely once Haaland left the field for Nico Gonzalez. This meant that Man City ended the game with a 5-5-0. And what was more bizarre was the manner in which the game changed, because Martinelli times his diagonal run impeccably to cut through Man City's very high and odds defensive line, and Eze wasted no time in setting him up with a delicious lob ball over the top. Martinelli returns the favour and he times a lovely lob finish over the devastated Donnarumma. Arsenal celebrated like they had won the game, but it was also a good test of resolve. Both teams earned a fair point, but the real winners this weekend were Liverpool, who finished the table 5 points clear. Sunderland won, Villa won. Sunderland's strong start to the Premier League versus Aston Villa's poor start to the Prem. Sunderland started the game bright, yet Villa found themselves with a man advantage after Reynaldo petulantly kicked out against Matty Cash to earn a red card and reduce Sunderland down to 10 men. This seemed to galvanise Sunderland, who came very close with Aldrete's diving header rattling off the crossbar. But as the game got to the second half, Matty Cash produced the standout moment of the game with his swerving strike outside the box from 25 yards, nestling into the top right corner. Sunderland, who did not play to accept defeat at any cost in this game, only needed 8 minutes to get themselves back in the game, as the informed Isidore scored a first-time finish from a lovely Xhaka cushion through ball header. Harvey Elliott had chances, they got blocked, and the moment of the game fell to Ollie Watkins right near the end to secure the 3 points for Aston Villa. He was onside, but his header was poor. For Sunderland, every point will matter this season. For Aston Villa, fans are scratching their heads at what is going on this season, as it's looking like the Aston Villa bubble has finally burst. Wolves won, Leeds 3. Wolves were looking for their first win of the new Premier League season. They found themselves right at the bottom of the table. Leeds were looking to atone for their 94th minute howler that gave the game to Fulham. And in the 11th minute, it was Wolves who had taken the lead after big money signing from Krajitsi arrived in the box unmarked to expertly steer the ball away from the keeper. Moments later, he carelessly gets dispossessed in his own half to give a chance for Leeds to claw themselves back into the game. It was the omen for things to come for Wolves, because Leeds started to smell blood, and their equalising goal came not longer after that moment, courtesy of Premier League steward in Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin has scored one of the best headed goals of the season so far, as he sneaks in between Wolves' defence, taking full advantage of a deep outswinging delivery from Jayden Bogle. Leeds continued to pile the misery on Wolves after a stunning free kick from Stacks, which was blasted into the top right corner, had given Leeds the 2-1 lead. Wolves' meaty ball got punished and Stacks took full advantage. The game then got killed off moments before the first half whistle blew, as new signing Noah Okafor scored his first goal of the season, taking advantage of a careless pass out from the back from Wolves. Leeds snatched onto it, released Okafor down the left hand side, and he punishes them with an expertly taken left left-footed finish. Wolves deservedly find themselves at the bottom of the table, and that's because they are not following the basic principles. They showcase weak pressing. They showcase a lack of intensity in their defensive duties. They aren't running for each other. They aren't fighting for each other, and they're rightfully getting punished. Wolves continue their winless streak to life back in the Prem, and if you're a Wolves fan, it's looking like a very worrying season at the Molineux Stadium. West Ham 1, Crystal Palace 2. West Ham continue to show they are the worst team at conceding set pieces this season, with Philip Mateta's 50th goal of his career at Crystal Palace adding to West Ham woes. Lacroix then had the opportunity from a similar set piece situation to make it 2-0, but his headed effort crashes off the crossbar. Ironically, it was a tale of corners, as West Ham had the final laugh from a set piece of their own, after Jarrod Bowen found himself uncharacteristically unmarked at the near post, who cheekily flicked it into the back of the net. West Ham grew in confidence. If there was a moment to turn things around, this was going to be the game, and they came especially close as Kyle Walker-Peters attacked a deep cross from the left side. But everything changed in the 68th minute mark. An unlikely scorer scores an astonishing goal. Not only are West Ham poor at defending corners, they've also been very bad at dealing with headers from open play. Adam Wharton's first time in swinging cross to the back post gets headed up by Kilman, but in typical fashion, it's panic from West Ham's defense, as West Ham centre-backs clatter into each other, presenting an incredible moment 5 yards away from goal that was too tantalizing for Tyrick Mitchell not to take with both hands. He unleashes his inner Roberto Carlos and lashes in a fierce volley at the near post. The 2-1 loss continues West Ham's winless streak at home, with their last game coming at home back on the 27th of February against relegated Leicester City. For Palace, on the other hand, it continues an excellent 2025, and they currently find themselves 4th in the new season table. Burnley 1, Forest 1. Postecoglou was looking for his first win as Forest's manager, and he thought he was on course when in the 98th second of the game, Nico Williams scored the fastest goal of the season as he latched onto a Douglas Luiz corner on the edge of the penalty area. A goal this early completely changed the tactical dynamics of this game, as the game was set up for there to be a victor, with both teams going for it, and this was reflected by the equalising goal scored by Jadon Anthony, who scored his 3rd goal of the season to equalise the game. These moments in the first half led to a very engaging end-to-end second half where both teams were going for 3 points. New England international and Elliot Anderson was at the heart of everything good for Nottingham Forest, pushing them and carrying them up the field, and he stepped up as Forest's wide players struggled to do much against the strong Burnley defence. Burnley came close, with Joanna coming close striking the crossbar. Igor forced a great save from Dubravka, and Forest applied more pressure, but Burnley are showing they got more resilience than anyone has ever seen. They've gone toe-to-toe versus Liverpool and United, only conceding late penalties, and it's quite clear the plan is to make Turf Moor a fortress this season. And with the smart recruitment of players such as Florentino Lewis, who stepped up to have a magnificent debut for Burnley, as well as Martin Dubravka, who is currently the in-form keeper in the country right now, making a whopping 7 saves against Nottingham Forest. Burnley may just have the minerals to pull off the great Premier League escape. What we learned on the first league weekend after Europe, game state management beats aesthetics. City were comfortable suffering without the ball and still took a point. Liverpool stayed perfect by controlling phases instead of chasing chaos. Newcastle's away bluntness is now a theme. 3 straight 0-0s on the road, and Spurs' resilience at Brighton keeps their floor high even when the high line wobbles. Palace looks sustainably coached and keeps stacking results. Sunderland showed top flight still with 10 men. Early dreadline, when midweek loads hit, draws tick up and margins shrink, and the teams who bank points in these low event games will still be there in spring. That's everything we've learned in match week 5 of the Premier League. Get commenting on what you learned this week on match week 5, and subscribe for more breakdowns on Nini FC.